presentation from Alicia Serada and Alexander Pfeiffer. She's from the University of Vaasa in Finland, and he's from the MIT Education Arcade and the University of Malta. And well, I'll leave the floor with you.
Yes, a few things changed since I've submitted the abstract. I'm them, and I'm Alicia, not Alessia, as it says on the program. Other than that, yes, so here we are, and we both do blockchain studies, and we both do game studies, but I come from the humanities, and Alexander comes from the technological side of things. So hopefully we will combine our approach in our project that is very much work in progress, but we really, really hope to get somewhere with it. And you're very welcome to make suggestions. So let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. And we have already seen and heard, and we've been presented with a lot of research at this conference as well about the role of social media that are not just the source of news, they are also a practice, a new possibility for civic engagement in news creation. This is the practice that can be described as amateur-assisted journalism. I use the term by Peter Dahlgren because I really like his approach to journalism and its contemporary challenges that are presented in one of those great volumes on the crisis of modern journalism. So Peter and his colleagues, they invite us to see it as not just challenge, but also an opportunity. So, and they also invite us to look into the practice of journalism and into its history, so we can see that the citizen journalism or amateur-assisted journalism is a practice that has long existed alongside vocational or professional journalism. In the modern world, professional and citizen journalism, in fact, coexist. They mutually influence each other, although not without tensions. Accountability is the main issue with citizen journalism because it doesn't have to follow the same standards as professional journalists, but also they can do good, they can do bad, as we've learned today and yesterday and the day before yesterday. And when we speak about fake news, as we've learned as well, they can emerge from both spheres. They can emerge from citizen journalism, and they can emerge from the state-sponsored journalism in totalitarian and authoritarian countries, as unfortunately many of us know. So these emerge as fake news emerge as a symptom of this crisis of ethical and professional standards in both spheres of contemporary journalism. And to add insult to injury, we have this hyperreality when real and fake news become indistinguishable, and media blends with the world in the form of hyperreality. And in our project, we hope to problematize several aspects of what is happening. Firstly is the question of accountability in civic news making. Secondly, it's the way news journalism is organized as an institution. And here I come with some life experience because I used to be a journalist in Belarus, if you know what I mean. I quit long before it became really dangerous. So we address the first question with blockchain technology and the second question with a role-playing game about a fictional publishing house that has the fictional gazettes. And there are different kinds of professional and citizen journalists who contribute to this gazette. So, and the third desired outcome that we pursue is to make players familiar with the basics of blockchain technology because it's used increasingly more often. Yes, and this is some of the previous work. Of course, the problem of fake news has been addressed in a number of projects already. One successful example that we both like, and it's already used in education, is the serious game Bad News. It's online, it's free, it teaches its players about the common tricks of online deception on Twitter, and its developers rely on the idea of inoculating the public, exposing it to small doses of fake news and how these fake news are made, which tactics are employed. So then players are able to distinguish between fake and real news. There are more games, of course. This game, there is also a different mechanic, is the game Factitious. It has this swipe mechanics, a little bit reminiscent of Tinder. It's regularly updated with new content. You can see that they have the pandemic edition already, so it's this version has news about COVID-19, and some of them are real, some of them are fake, and you have to distinguish between them. There are many more other games. Most of them are in the pilot stage, but actually, if you want to build such game yourself, Alexander's team has already presented a tool for that. It's a free online game creator. You can try it. It's available online. It was developed as a part of the project that also did a small research, really like basic testing of the bad news game with very good results. So you can see this graph. This graph, it comes from this research. It also has another game mentioned, but what we can see is that once again, the bad news game appeared to be rather enjoyable and educational, and its players from the focus groups were more or less educated and quite enjoyed this game, found it's rather fine. So such educational tools are needed, but they're not always sufficient. I've also found a study of practical implementation of Factitious in the classroom, and the researcher came to the conclusion that, and I quote, students think they know how to evaluate sources, but oftentimes they do not actually know what to look at, end quote. So more different types of exercises are needed. And also, as coming from previous research of my colleagues, students can learn either by playing games or by creating games themselves, such as with that game creator. Probably we move to the next slide. What about real games, like fun games? Of course, all of these games are fun, but some are were created specifically with the purpose of learning something, and this game was created with the purpose of advertising The Dark Knight, the film from 2008. And this was a very successful alternate reality game that also included citizen journalism. So one episode of the game invited its players to collect information about the political campaign of Harvey Dent, and then some news were posted on the website. And what's really cool about this project is that its archive is still online. So you can look at these artifacts from 2007, and there's a lot to learn in terms of how to build an alternate reality game. And this is where I pass the torch to Alexander, and he will introduce a little bit more of the technical details. Why blockchain? What can you do with blockchain? How can you play with blockchain in a way that teaches you more about verifying your sources, teaches you more about the technology, and also simulates some of the quirks of working in a publishing house or being a journalist. So again, what are our goals? First, the skill of evaluation of sources, then understanding how a newsroom works, and this is where the role-playing aspect comes to help, and finally, understanding of blockchain technologies. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think answering this question would take us to a whole class over 3 or 4 days, but I try to give you an overview in the next 7 minutes about the game mechanics, the gamification sort of that we implemented, and the roles of the player and us, the game masters. So the players, those are like people that like to play the game and register with us. They can take over a role as a stringer, as an editor or a journalist. They will get blockchain addresses on the Ardor network assigned from our side. What this will lead to is something I will tell you in a minute. Then we, the game masters, Alessia and me, we play 2 entities. One is the press club, and one is the Gotham Gazette, as we called our newspaper. The press club is basically here to start the chain of trust, on which I will also talk a little bit more in a minute. But we used the possibility of digital IDs and registering blockchain addresses with a message to the very own address, with the message to self. So basically, we registered our newspaper on blockchain in the simulated press club. And then we have the general public. Those is basically everyone who is using Twitter and is reading the tweets either from our players, who might use a fake account or might use the personal account, and of course the Twitter account from the Gotham Gazette. What's very important here is that in the final version, so it's work in progress, what we solved is on the one hand the game mechanics, on the other hand the pure blockchain part. But in the final version, the game will have, of course, a front end for the users and for us a back end. We use API calls between the blockchain and the web applications to communicate with each other, and at the end, of course, to have the tweets displayed and the point system again on the front end. So for blockchain, this blockchain in our case has two use cases. One is that we send blockchain-based messages between the different accounts and within one account. And then we also included a trust score, and this is a restricted utility token. Basically, it's a set of tokens which has its unique blockchain ID, but we set the approval model. So only under certain circumstances you can send this token, which acts as a point system from one account to another. At the end, from our main account to the players. So how do we start? We have the list of players. We start with a master seed, which represents the main account, and then we register the players with their other addresses and accounts, or we create the accounts for our players. What's really important is that we have on the one hand the identity management for the players, that we know who is the player who is behind an account, and on the other hand blockchain to store the data. So identity always has to go hand in hand with a safe way to store the data. Here you see the main account with the player address is registered, and those accounts are also named. So when you just click on the other address on a block explorer, then you see what's the role of an account. So the press club is here to start the chain of trust. The Gazzetta is registered at the press club. Each journalist is registered as a journalist in the press club. And if he works for us, the Gazette officially, he's also registered with a message to self from us, from the Gazzetta. So then we give our players quests to do. If you ever played FIFA soccer, maybe, then you have a lot of quests around the topic of playing soccer, like shoot a goal with some French guy and pass him with a German. And then you get points and you get bonuses. And for us, we have a list of quests ready then on the website where the players can join. And for example, they can choose in the category sports that they either write an accurate report on a game or that they come up with fake news. If they come up with fake news and people start to believe them, then they double the score. If people don't believe them, they get a penalty, like that we are not reading their messages for several days. To give you a very brief and short example, let's say the goal is to report the new blue house in Vienna. In this case, and now I just show you the block explorer as the front end itself is not ready. But here you see on the left upper corner, you see the blockchain address of one journalist, the registered journalist. The message that will then be sent through the API calls is here in this case, the new house in Vienna is blue, sent from the journalist to us. And this generates this wonderful JSON file that can be viewable on any block explorer. And then here I used my own account to present the player. I tweet the new house in Vienna is blue, and automatically it adds the link where you can verify it on blockchain. Then here we have the, so Alicia's account represents the Gazzetta, and she is altering the core information because of course she wants new clicks. and she writes, wow, there is a new blue house in Vienna, but the core information is that there is a blue house, and then it's again referring to the original source, and this article is also on the website of the Gazzetta. And then people can vote if they believe or not believe, and this generates, we developed a point system, and based on the point system, people will receive a certain amount of the trust tokens, and the trust tokens at the end is their high score. And with a high score, they get benefits like that we prefer messages from a certain user from our end. So it's like this bad 5-star dystopia a little bit that we also try to implement. So Alessia, it's on you for the final words.
Yes, thank you. Actually, the other platform that Alex uses, it has many more different affordances. It actually has its own voting system. It has like, you can do really a lot of things with it. And one of the important things is this adds to the alternate reality dimension of the game. As many previous studies have shown, educators want to have the games that are like really connected to the real world, and Ardor is not a gaming platform and Twitter is not a gaming platform, but when we use it this way, we kind of end up with this hyper reality. When we did that little test, there were even like blockchain bots coming and retweeting our messages. That was the greatest part of this.
What's also important is that we also stick to reality, but when it comes to fake news, we will not let our players model fake news that will have their Twitter account deleted or bring them to prison. So we take really care in regards to the game design. But I think we are finished with the 15 minutes.
Yes, I have to ask you to conclude, please.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why, unfortunately, and contradictory to the initial idea of blockchain, our game still has game masters, for example, us, because someone still needs to keep the things in control. This is debatable, but this is how it's modeled right now. So, and what we're trying to achieve here, we're trying to achieve, we're trying to model a civic culture of journalism that includes also citizen journalism and professional journalism, and to model this situation that would also illustrate the conflicts of power within journalism, professional journalism itself. For example, these tokens of reputation, this money that is spent on sending messages, this cryptocurrency, small amounts of cryptocurrency that can be spent on sending messages, so there are working expenses for journalists, and then they can get fees and rewards for doing good work, and then can be fined for doing the bad work. But also there's also the conflict between stringers or citizen journalists and the professional journalists even inside the publishing house. So if we are able to run it as a role-playing game, it will, we all will learn so much more about how many challenges the practice of news making involves. I'll conclude with this probably, and we'll be ready to discuss more, because it's just, you can do so much more with what we have now.
One very last sentence, we show blockchain and digital IDs from a technical standpoint that it might work, but at the end it depends on the users and their belief if they use the tools.